Good morning. It is Tuesday, the 24th of February. I'm Maeve McMahon, and this is Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis, live here on Euronews. Coming up, today marks 4 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which unleashed the deadliest war on the continent since World War II. To begin this special edition, we can start by rewinding the clock to see how it all started. Jakub Janis reports.
Me, I can hear you.
4 years ago today, Russian troops crossed the border and the first missiles struck Ukrainian cities.
Yeah, I need to go and hide now, Marta. I need to go and hide.
And millions of Ukrainians woke up to the sounds of explosions. Russia started its full-scale invasion, an all-out war which seemed unimaginable in the 21st century Europe. But human tragedy doesn't need another explanation. It needs memory. So today, here is the timeline Europeans must never forget. First missiles, first air raid sirens, first mass evacuations to the west, and almost immediately, first signs of fierce resilience. From the border guards on Snake Island refusing to surrender to ordinary citizens protesting in the streets of occupied Kherson. From President Zelensky recording a video in the dark streets of Kiev, saying he's not going to flee, to Russian troops encircling the capital. With the occupation came what later proved to be horrifying atrocities in places like Bucha and Irpin. And in the south, Russian forces targeted Zaporizhia nuclear power plant and laid a brutal siege to the coastal city of Mariupol. Russia expected Kiev to fall in 3 days, and most military experts said it was not a matter of if, but when. But we are now in 2026. Moscow destroys civilian energy infrastructure, causing massive blackouts and leaving millions freezing. And the war has evolved, redefined by drones and technology. And Europe? Over 4 million Ukrainian refugees hold temporary EU protection. 3/4 are women and children, since martial law requires military-aged men to stay and fight. And while Kiev and Washington both want a ceasefire, Moscow simply refuses to stop the fighting. And so, the timeline of this tragedy keeps ticking.
Jakub Janis reporting for us there. And to mark this sombre moment, Ukrainian flags are flying outside the EU institutions today. And the President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the President of the Council, Antonio Costa, are visiting Kiev today. For more, we can actually cross now live to the Ukrainian capital, where AP correspondent Philip Crowther is standing by for us. Good morning, Philip. Thank you so much for joining us. Just tell us, what is the mood in Kiev this morning, and how are locals holding up 4 years on?
Well, look, this is still a very proud country indeed, and I think it's fair to say that the first impression today, surprisingly, might have been one of relief for most Ukrainians because of the blue skies and the just above freezing temperatures we have here today. That is not a trivial matter because it has been such a brutally cold winter over the last few weeks and months because of Russian attacks on Ukraine's electricity grid. So many Ukrainians have had to survive without electricity and without heating. Of course, the situation along the front line and in eastern Ukraine particularly critical. Ukraine is also, of course, very aware that this country is now entering its 5th year of war with Russia, and there is no end in sight, essentially, and most Ukrainians know this, of course, at this moment. It is a stalemate right now, both on the very long front line with Russian forces, but also politically there is a stalemate with both the Russian and Ukrainian sides essentially not budging and not getting closer in their negotiating positions that could lead to at least a ceasefire and possibly a lasting peace in the future.
And meanwhile, Philip, EU leaders are in Kiev today. What should we expect from their visit?
Yeah, as you mentioned, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa will be here today in Kiev. They were hoping that they could bring a 20th Russian sanctions package with them with unanimous approval from Brussels. That was not to be because of Hungarian opposition. Also, a huge loan for Ukraine has not been made possible at this point. Of course, now is also a moment to look back at past anniversaries, and the mood certainly has changed. There are fewer foreign leaders expected here in Kiev on this 4th anniversary. You might want to look back at the 1st anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion. A few days just prior, US President Joe Biden was here with full US support for Ukraine. Well, how times have changed. We are not expecting any US presence here in Kiev today, and of course US President Donald Trump might be watching from Washington, and he is of course key to any possible negotiations for a ceasefire or a peace here in Ukraine.
OK, Philip Crowther, thank you so much for that live update there from the Ukrainian capital. And as Philip reported there, a 90 billion loan to Ukraine has indeed been blocked by Hungary, and a 20th sanctions package was held up as well by Hungary and Slovakia. For more on what happens next, we're joined now here on set by our very own EU News editor, Maria Tadeo. Good morning.
Good morning.
So look, is the EU showing up here empty-handed then today?
Well, not quite, because as you said, Ursula von der Leyen and Antonio Costa, they are already in Ukraine. They arrived this morning, and the expectation, according to sources familiar in explaining it to Euronews, the goal of this trip, the head of the Commission will announce a package dedicated to the energy infrastructure severely damaged, worth 100 million euros, and that announcement will be made. But of course, it's not really what the Commission and the member states were hoping to achieve on a day like today. The idea was to present that 90 billion euro loan for Ukraine, but also, of course, the sanctions on Russia on this anniversary. Now, yesterday there was a meeting of European foreign ministers. The Hungarians double vetoed that package. Slovakia also announced late yesterday that it would halt some of the emergency electricity supply to Ukraine, and all of this going on with a dispute over a pipeline that transits Russian oil that both Hungary and Slovakia accused Ukraine of not doing enough to fix it after it was damaged. Of course, yesterday we understand that there was a form of clash between the Hungarians and Slovakia. The Ukrainian foreign minister participated also in this call over who is going to repair this pipeline and who is responsible for it. At this point, the European Union still insists the damage was carried out by Russia. The Ukrainians are doing the best they can, but this is a difficult situation. And there is some fury in some sectors in Brussels today who now say at this point the Hungarians are abusing their veto right because the loan had already been approved in December and it's unrelated to the pipeline. You're going to get a lot of talk about Article 7, of course, suspending some of the member rights, the idea of qualified majority for foreign policy decisions, and the principle of sincere cooperation. But the reality is, Maeve, is that Brussels is also scared of doing too much and going too hard on the Hungarians because the election campaign is still on ahead of April.
Of course, Maria Tadeo, our Euronews EU editor, thank you so much for that update. And of course, here at Euronews, we had the opportunity to speak to a number of those foreign ministers, many expressing their disappointment in this decision by Hungary. And actually, Radosław Sikorski, that's the Polish-Hungarian foreign minister, spoke to our Shona Murray on the sidelines of that meeting. And she started by asking him exactly what his message to the Hungarian government was.
Hungary has had plenty of opportunities over the years to do what the rest of Europe has already done, namely to sign long-term contracts for the delivery of oil and gas from the south, without having to buy it directly from Putin and thereby oiling Putin's war machine. They've done it before. Remember, they vetoed the disbursement of about 7 billion euros to countries that have supplied equipment to Ukraine from the European Peace Facility, including $500 million real money to Poland. And also remember that one of the priorities of the Polish presidency was to open at least one negotiating cluster with Ukraine, fundamentals, democracy, rule of law. Supposedly Hungary has problems with treatment of minorities, so it should be in favor of negotiating the first cluster, but Hungary vetoed it. So this is an escalation of established practice that favors Vladimir Putin.
So what's the solution? Because, as you said there, this has been a sort of a myriad of blockages over the past few years. I mean, what is the solution here? Is it Article 7 or what is it?
Well, I personally am not sure what the technical state of the pipeline is. I understand it was damaged by the Russians. If so, then it's a little unfair to blame and to take it out on the Ukrainians, the victims of aggression. So I hope that matter is clarified. I hope, as I said, that Hungary gets its oil from other directions. And then, of course, we know in what context this is happening, in the context of Hungarian elections. So I hope whoever wins will take a new look at it.
What do you see for the moment for Europe, given that the United States is really taken itself off the pitch in supporting Ukraine and Europe is alone? I mean, for the next few years coming up, what do you see happening?
Well, I think our cards, to use terminology that is close to Donald Trump's heart, are quite strong. We have supported Ukraine more than the United States. We are now the sole source of support for the Ukrainian state, for the Ukrainian armed forces, for the Ukrainian defense industry. And sooner or later will come a point where the United States and Putin will realize that Ukraine will make its own decisions based on the support that it has from Europe, and therefore that Europe's view and Europe's security interests cannot be ignored.
Radoslaw Sikorski there, the Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs, speaking to our Shona Murray. And now for the view from Ukraine, we can bring in Hevgenia Kravchuk, a member of the Ukrainian Parliament since 2019. Good morning, Hevgenia. Thank you so much for joining us here on Europe Today.
Thank you, May, for having me.
Look, as you've been hearing there, that crucial loan for Ukraine is being held up due to politics. What does that mean now for your country?
Well, we hope that the European Commission and European leaders can actually sort it out, because clearly the vote in European Parliament and the political will is there. So it's just something that Hungary always does, trying to get more money in return from European budget, because Hungary is actually not donated into European common budget, but extracting money. And obviously, of course, it's being used now during the campaign, which is in full swing in Hungary. But what I can tell you on the 4th years of anniversary of the full-scale invasion, and actually 12 year of aggression itself, because it all started in 2014 by an accession of Crimea, and actually it made an appeasement to Russia, to Putin, that no one actually cared too much, and sanctions were weak, and the Europe and the whole world didn't send a signal that if you violate the law, then there are some, circumstances. And in the result, Kremlin was sure that Europe will not be united, will not be helping. Well, obviously, Ukrainians will give up, and here we are. This Kyiv in 3 days is now 4 years, and we were able to save our statehood and to save our sovereignty.
Indeed, and look, the sanctions package is on hold. The fund, the loan is on hold, and also the US-led talks seem to be on hold, or on limbo, or it's stalemate, as our correspondent earlier, Philip Crowther, reported from Kiev. Do you think President Trump is really interested in peace?
Well, I think that President Trump really is interested to announce that he ended another war. Obviously, that's had been an intention during his campaign, and now we see that he wants to be this peacemaker in the world, but it does take an effort because this war is much bigger than a regional conflict. It is the Russia trying to divide the Europe to have these spheres of influence. Okay. So hopefully we'll see some pressure on Russia, not on Ukraine.
Okay, Hevgenia Kravchuk, Ukrainian MP, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Europe Today. And now
Thank you for having me.
And beyond, of course, politics and diplomacy are real people and families who've been suffering immense losses. Thousands of Ukrainian children have been abducted, are now held in Russia or Russian-occupied territories. For more on this side of the story, I'm joined here on set by our very own Sasha Vakalina. Sasha, you've been reporting on this very sad side of this story. Tell us more about your investigations.
This is indeed one of the most tragic aspects of Russia's full-scale invasion, which also proven to be deliberate strategy by Moscow, because for the first time when Russia abducted Ukrainian child was in Crimea in 2014, and it might take years for Kyiv to bring one single child back.
Over the past 4 years, Russia forcefully deported at least 20,000 Ukrainian children. Kyiv managed to bring back 2,000. Among them is Vlad Buryak. He was 16 when Russian forces abducted him at the checkpoint as he tried to evacuate from occupied Melitopol to Zaporizhia. Vlad was taken first to the filtration camp and then to a Russian prison. He spent 90 days in captivity.
One of my job was cleaning torture room. After torturing, in this special room was lots of bloods, was lots of like medicine bandages and everything. And after torturing, I most of time cleaned torturing room. After blood, just mop the floor, take off some rubbish from this room. Lots of Russian soldiers and lots of Russian special forces who tortured people. They say that Ukraine not already exists.
Yale's Humanitarian Research Lab placed the number of deported Ukrainian children closer to 35,000. Moscow claimed that the number could be as high as 700,000.
The actions of the Russian Federation towards Ukrainian children are not isolated incidents or humanitarian decisions gone wrong. They are part of a deliberate strategy, a state policy of demographic engineering and identity erasure. This is the arc of Russia's design: isolate, reprogram, deploy. If we speak about the scale, the true numbers are only known to Russia.
According to Ukrainian officials, over 1.5 million Ukrainian children currently remain under Russian occupation.
Sasha Vakalina reporting there for us, and you can read more about Vlad's story on Euronews.com. But now to hear how morale among Ukrainian soldiers is 4 years into the full-scale invasion, we can bring in now Dmytro Chotenko, a young Ukrainian who gave up his job in IT to join the front line. Good morning, Dmytro. Thank you so much for joining us here on Europe Today.
Morning, Maeve. Welcome to the day 1462.
Just tell us, how is the morale now among soldiers?
It's high. The morale is high, and I think we just accepted. Say it again. Check, check. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So,
we can hear you, yeah.
Even though it's day 1462, the morale is high. We just accepted that we are here for as long as we need to, so we could defend our homes, defend our families, and this motivation, I think, during the warfare, it has evolved into a very stoic mindset for all of the fighters here.
How long more do you think the war will last, and how much more can you put up with it?
I think it's going to last at least a year. Russian idiots are not planning to stop anyhow. And even if we destroy them in hundreds of thousands, they're not willing to stop. So there must be another solution, another actions that we might take, such as destroy their ability to wage the war. And for that, we do the enormous amount of deep strikes. It's a big power shift in the warfare. But it's still a long process. So to destroy Russia economically, it's a very long game.
And you're live, of course, here on Euronews. We're broadcasting from Brussels. So what would be your message this morning for EU leaders and policymakers right here in the de facto EU capital?
I would suggest that you guys read a very recent article by the Wall Street Journal saying about Ukraine NATO training, where 10 Ukrainian soldiers, together with their drones, they took out 2 entire battalions of joint forces of NATO. I think that this is the right time for the NATO forces to come and learn from Ukrainians as soon as possible, because we are so interested in having you strong.
Thank you so much for sending on that message and for joining us this morning on Europe Today. This does bring, though, our special edition of Europe Today to an end. Later, we'll bring you actually that press conference live from Kyiv to hear President Zelensky alongside EU leaders. So do tune in for that. And tune in again tomorrow. We'll be joined here on set by the Vice President, Teresa Ribera of the Commission. Take care and thanks for watching.